let's check out the solution challenge.
Let's do this.
Okay, I'll present my screen.
Welcome to the Google Developer Student Club's 2021 Solution Challenge. The mission of this challenge is to use Google technology to solve for one of the United Nations' 17 Sustainable Development Goals, aiming to end poverty, ensure prosperity, and protect the planet. Win cool prizes, mentorship from Google, and swag. Get help along the way from Google at training events, code labs, and hackathons. Submit your solution by March 31st, 2021. Register today. We can't wait to see what you build.
Let's get started. Developer karena developer Awalnya Hastu bukan merupakan seorang yang percaya diri, namun setelah dia ikut DSC, dia menjadi lebih percaya diri dan lebih tertarik untuk mendalami skill di bidang pemrograman Android. Saya belajar membuat aplikasi untuk membantu orang yang berjaya seperti saya. Saya bangga dengan Hastu karena selama Hastu join di DSC, dia memiliki progres yang cukup signifikan.
When I came to first year, I found it difficult navigating a lot of facilities on campus. Most first year students, they found it a major challenge. So I said, okay, this is something that we really need to solve. The DSC is a community where students who are like-minded come together to learn technologies in cloud, Android development, and web development. So after a few workshops, I figured that we could solve accessibility for first year students. We decided to use the mall as a use case to build a navigation system using AR technology. At first, people were like, this is really a complex problem to solve. But then after we broke the problem down, we realized that all the technologies we had to use, we had already learned them in our DSC workshops.
When I heard about it, I was like, David, I need to join this project because I was lost basically the entire first academic year. And that's what DSC does. It gives you a project and it makes sure that you are well equipped to work on the project.
So we had a lot of volunteers and we broke them into teams. First, we had a Blender team to get a 3D model of the building. Then we had a Unity and Scripted team who got the models and made it interactive and available to the Android team, who built the screens and the app and used Firebase, which stores user data and for business analytics. And we had a UI team who created a designer set and all the dynamic interfaces you see. Last, we had a documentation team who put everything into one file to make it available to the open source community.
My name is Paul and I study chemistry. I got inspired by attending one of the DSC seminars.
I'm actually very impressed about my brother's journey here because I, as a computer science student,
I just have to focus on the PC parts, computer building apps, but he has something else to do. But he's still taking some time off to help us and he's really doing a good job. Now I can build Android apps. That means I can use that as a part-time job and maybe chemistry as my full-time job, or maybe the vice versa.
There were times that we had to meet in the evenings. There were times we had to meet early in the morning just to get the project working.
It was hard, but then we looked at the bigger picture and realized that, okay, we can do this. So, yeah. DSC is a family and it's about the learning of teamwork and leadership.
What we've built is not a perfect app, but we've come a long way by being able to use the knowledge that we gain from our DSC workshops. My God, this is cool. Who wouldn't love this?
Saya dilahirkan di Bojonegoro. Ibu saya mendidik saya boleh bermain, tapi bermainnya itu nggak boleh jauh-jauh. Terus saya melihat kakak saya kebanjiran, yang paling parah itu tahun 2007, di mana rumahnya itu sangat tenggelam, banyak korban jiwa yang ditimbulkan, dan kakak saya itu kehilangan.
Kemarin ya lumayan, kemarin. Ya.
Kalau airnya semakin tinggi kan, nggak bisa lalu lintas kendaraan kan nggak bisa lewat, kita biasanya pakai perahu. Palingnya kalau udah agak parah lagi kita ngungsi.
Warga juga pasti resah, kalau enggak sebelumnya belum diberitahu kan resah. Kalau sudah diberitahu kan nanti ada persiapan.
Saya ketika kuliah di PENS ini, saya pertama kali tahu DSC itu dari Dana. Seharusnya kita bisa menghindari hal buruk terjadi ketika kita mengetahui apa yang akan terjadi. Dana membantu saya sekali dalam hal tersebut bersama tim untuk membuat aplikasi Flotter.
Alatnya itu bersifat kayak misal di sini bakalan ada banjir, dari pemerintah bakalan langsung, tidak berdasarkan yang sebelumnya berdasarkan data kami, itu berdasarkan dari WhatsApp. Nanti setelah itu penduduk bisa ke posko terdekat. Di sini ada lokasi-lokasi poskonya. Terus kita bisa kayak ngeset arahnya belok kiri maupun belok kanan itu ada. Karena kita memanfaatkan teknologi arahan juga dari Google. Oke, sudah selesai?
Oke, selesai.
Oke.
Kemudian kita mencoba ke sana, kita menunjukkan ke warga Bojonegoro.
Kalau sekarang kalau ada aplikasi ini kan bisa langsung masuk ke HP-nya masing-masing. Jadi semua warga langsung otomatis langsung tahu.
Di sini kita milik Balai Desa
Mulia Agung,
ya. Arah.
Ya.
Di sini kita bisa lihat di posko ini ada berapa banyak orang.
Membantu banget berarti ya, sangat amat membantu.
Iya. Ini rencana emang akan kami rilis ke Bojonegoro.
Oh gitu ya.
This is the power of DSC students all over the world. We can learn and teaching together and also to solve local problems.
Dengan adanya aplikasi Flotter ini, saya merasa sangat senang sekali saya bisa membantu warga masyarakat Bojonegoro, terutama untuk kakak saya.
Let's check out the solution challenge.
Let's do this.
Okay, I'll present my screen.
Welcome to the Google Developer Student Club's 2021 Solution Challenge. The mission of this challenge is to use Google technology to solve for one of the United Nations' 17 Sustainable Development Goals, aiming to end poverty, ensure prosperity, and protect the planet. Win cool prizes, mentorship from Google, and swag. Get help along the way from Google at training events, code
Good afternoon, DSC Philippines. Hi, JJ from DSC USLS.
Hello, Lou from DSC UBV.
We're back again in Day 2 of Funky Flutter February. Yesterday we went through the basics of Jordan Flutter with Sir Harvey J. Season.
Today, we'll dive deeper into Flutter with different APIs and tools that will help us build even funkier apps. We'll have, by the way, what time is it, Lou?
I think it's around 2:02 p.m. But what time is it, JJ?
I think the time is actually block o'clock. Our first speaker for today will talk about the functionalities of Flutter Block, his state management tool of choice for Flutter. So let's introduce our speaker for this segment.
Currently the lead Flutter developer for Boozy.ph, Joennie Sindo has worked with multiple teams and different companies such as Bayview Technologies and I'm Free Inc., having developed their apps. Along his journey, he has mentored several mobile developers on how to use Flutter technologies. He's also a core member and speaker of Flutter Philippines.
So please welcome Sir Joennie to the virtual stage. Hello, Sir Joennie. So, how are you today, sir?
I was muted. Sorry about that. Hello. Good afternoon. Doing fine. How about you guys?
We're doing great, sir. It's wonderful to have you here.
Yes. Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to impart my knowledge to students everywhere.
All right. So before we begin, sir, we have a question for you as well as the audience. So when it comes to JavaScript, what's your state management tool of choice for it?
JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I used to do a few React before, and usually I use Redux. And it's based on different projects. One time I have a project with basically just using jQuery, where I built the framework from scratch, and there weren't any frameworks before. So yeah, it really depends on the project that you have.
Oh, thank you for your answer, Sir Joennie. And we'd also like to know what kind of state management tools our guests prefer. So, guys, feel free to share your answers in the comments below. All right. So, yeah,
are we talking about JavaScript or Flutter?
This is just to break the ice here. So
right,
we're going to do this for every speaker.
Yeah.
So we'll wait a bit for the comments, and while our guests are commenting, I think we can give the floor to Sir Joennie now. It's block o'clock, and he'll be talking about Flutter Block.
Alrighty.
All right. So the stage is yours, Sir Joennie.
Share my screen. Hold on. Cool. Can you see my screen? There you go. All right. Cool. Well, as you explore Flutter, you'll be creating more complex applications besides, the hello world and the UI examples. During this time, when you need to share application state from between screens. Later on, we'll dive into examples of it. And basically, what is state and what is how do you manage it? Hello, my name is Joennie Sindo, and I will be introducing you to state management for Flutter. I have been a Flutter developer since 2018, but before that, I'm a web developer for over 15 plus years. That's why I guess there was a question about JavaScript before. But ever since working with Flutter, I've been focusing on Flutter. I haven't done any web development work. That's why my mind is really focused on Flutter. Anyway, during the time I worked as a Flutter developer, I have developed several apps, and indeed, state management is one of the most important things that you need to think of. It's one of the key elements of your success in your applications. All right. So here are some examples that I've done before. So you have, um, these three corporate projects that I did. One is one is using block pattern. This is during the time that there's a lack of packages before. So I had to learn the block pattern from the Google Google websites. Just checking out YouTube tutorials and building it from scratch. But then working on I'm Free and Boozy.ph, I've been using Flutter underscore block package. For personal projects, I've been trying to experiment on some stuff. One is this one is also block. The PH stock tracker. This one is kind of an experiment. It's a Critterpedia for Animal Crossing. I'm not sure if I'm sure you've heard of it, wherein you collect a lot of animals and critters, bugs and stuff like that. Um, this here I created it using the provider state management. I also created a game. In this case, it's using a different type of state management. It's called State Machine, but that's going to be a separate discussion. And finally, I also did some art, generative art. In this case, it's only generating it once, so it's just a stateful widget that I use for developing it. Okay, so with those examples, when you are creating um, applications in Flutter, you always see this formula. Flutter is the declarative. This means that Flutter builds its user interface to reflect its current state of your app. All right, we're talking about states again. Anyways, when your state of your app changes, for example, a user flips a switch, clicks on a button or taps on a button, your screen is rebuilt by Flutter. Right? You don't necessarily trigger or ask the widget precisely to change it. Basically, when you pass in state, it always changes. It always rebuilds. In some cases, if you're coming from other programming languages, it might seem to be a bit too expensive because it's rebuilding things. But in Flutter and in Dart, they have a really good infrastructure when it comes to that, especially for garbage collection. So you don't have to worry about it. Just just pass in the new state, and it will rebuild it. So in this case, so you have your UI, your build is equals to your build methods and the application state. Think of it this way: here's an analogy. If you're going to the mall on a normal day, you will see it's really plain, right? But then again, when the state changes, for example, there's a holiday, boom, things change. So they have builders and workers to work on that one. And the next day, when it's a holiday, you will see everything has already changed. So basically, that's the same with Flutter. But of course, since we're talking about computers here, it works, multi many times faster. All right. So basically, whenever I say state, or whenever we say state, it's actually data. So so when a person clicks a switch, there's a data. Is it on and off, or true or false. Or for example, in this case, what is the state? Is it a normal day or a holiday? So that's basically the state is. It's data. So what is the state management? The state management is basically data management. In this example, so you have a cart, a catalog system here. So in this case, when where you store your data is quite important, because if you follow the tutorial before of intro to Flutter, um, a widget can access potentially data, coming up from its parent widgets. All right. So in this case, instead of placing the cart data here in my catalog, we place it up here in the My App, so that my list items, so if it's clicked or not, and in cart, my cart can determine if that particular item has been selected, right? So basically, that's the goal of state management. Just managing where your data is stored. Now there are several different versions or different state management techniques that you can use. First one is a set state, which is available in stateful widgets, and there's also inherited widgets, provider, block, redux, MoveX, and more. Now the thing is, if you are going to work on your application, doesn't necessarily mean that you stick with block, or you stick with provider. You cannot use set state or inherited widget. Especially this too is built in with Flutter. Okay, so you can use multiple things, multiple state management. But of course, if you're going to use Redux and block at the same time, maybe that's going to make your application bigger. So you have to determine if you have a major, for example, in this one, the block, um, the state management, and maybe you can use inherited widget and set state in those smaller widgets. It doesn't necessarily have to use block alone. All right. So in this um, you know session, we're going to focus on block business logic component. Okay. So business logic component. This is basically the state management that was introduced by Flutter, the Flutter team, the Google team, like years before, around 2018. That's basically what they are suggesting. So that's what I learned, and that's what I stick to. And it's kind of makes sense because it's quite built for Flutter. But of course, if you find other sets, state management much easier to understand, you're open to try it out and do the same. All right. Now, why use block? Basically, it separates business logic with UI. This is quite important because if you're going to do, for example, stateless widget, and you use that as your state management. But then again, you change your UI, and you change your page. Then you have to redo your work. You just copy paste them and stuff like that. No, with this one, it separates the UI. So in this case, if for example your UI changes, you can just change the UI, and your block, your logic stays the same. Okay, whatever that logic is. Predictable state changes, meaning if the user, for example, presses on one, two, for example, you have imagine you have 5 buttons, and the user presses 1, 3, and the fifth button. Block, next time, whenever the user presses those 3 buttons, you expect that you will have the same results. That's basically predictable state changes. And of course, code reuse. This is also an important part of Block. It's because you can use it on multiple widgets, and you can also use Block for if you have a Flutter project and you have an Angular project as well. So the business logic can be used with Flutter and with Angular. All right. Cool. So in order to use Block, you have to know a bit of core concepts. I think this is also core concept with Flutter. Basically, one is futures async await. Async operation lets you program complete work while waiting for another operation to finish. What's an example of that one? For example, you're fetching data over the network. You need to basically wait for the data to come back. So you fetch data, send out the signal, trigger the fetch, and of course you have to wait for the reply. I mean, there are so many factors that will happen. Like for example, so internet, if there's any internet connection at all, your processor as well. So basically, those are asynchronous um, asynchronous codes. Um, Here's an example of this. Here we're trying to fetch, for example, we're trying to fetch um, data from numbers API, and um, our method basically is expecting a string, but it's a future string. So basically, it's kind of similar to if you have done JavaScript reactive programming. It's kind of similar to that to promises. Basically, you add an async, and whenever there is an operation, for example, this one, HTTP GET, this URL, you put in an await. Basically, it triggers this and waits for the data to come back, and it's going to be um, placed here in the response, and then you can return it as response body. Then this is what you will get from that. Okay, pretty simple. Um, Next is streams. Streams is a sequence of asynchronous data. So so you see the future already, futures already. Streams is also important core concept in Block. In order to use a Block library, it's critical to have a basic understanding of this one. If you are not familiar with streams, think of it as a stream of data flowing, um, in a pipe going through. So whenever you have a new data from here, um, it towards the end of the pipe, you have a stream of new change data. Okay, so that's basically a um, simple explanation of a stream. So here is basically how it looks like. It's kind of similar to features wherein you have a sync. Now instead of async, you put in an asterisk. This method becomes an async generator. All right, we are able to now produce streams of data. Now in this case, you would see there's a yield I. So what will happen is that instead of just returning one data, all right, it will go through the loop and it will return one. I think it starts. Yeah, it starts with 0. For example, the max is 3, so 0, 1, 2, and 3. So basically, that's a stream. You can also create a stream using a stream controller. And here, Um, Here's an example of the stream control. Number one, if you want to create a stream where you can put a value on on the start of the stream controller, so you define a stream controller double controller, and number two, you basically assign it to a variable called the stream. Now the stream, whenever there is new data in it, it can be listened to. That's a beauty of it. I mean, in number three, so you have stream.listen value. So whenever you, number four, add a new number, it will try and print out a value from controller number 12, in this case number 12. If you put in controller that add 1, it's going to print out value from controller 1, and so on and so forth. Okay. So with this futures stream and stream controller, let's see how a block would look like internally, basic, right? So here, what you have here. So on the left, yeah, you have the event. Sync is basically a stream that listens to any event changes. Okay, so whenever you call an event, it goes into a sync, and the sync, there's a business logic. This is where you put in your processing, your logic. Basically, if you're trying to add all of the data, all of the integers being passed here, business logic will basically do the new data plus old data, then pass it to the stream controller. The stream controller then, whenever you add new data to the stream controller after you do your processing, it goes to the stream, and then it emits out a state. All right. So basically, that's how things work with block. But it feels complicated, right? I mean, if you're going to do this, if you're going to program this on your own, it's quite complicated. But don't worry, we already have a block library or block package. Block library is a library of packages depending on what you're going to use it for. Block is the main core library. This is basically whatever you see here. It's basically contained here, already, so you don't have to worry about building those. Flutter block is the library you import to Flutter in order to use block and some libraries or some methods to display things in your Flutter application. And as you can see, there's also an Angular block if you're going to do Angular, Angular projects as well. There's also test if you're going to do unit testing and something like that with block. All right, so here is how block would now look like. So the things that you see before is now contained in a block, basically. So your UI, whenever you press a button or swipe or do anything, all right, you trigger an event, and this event is sent to the block, and the block processes it. You have all your logic here. And once it's done, it sends out the state. Okay, so here's an example of the counter event. So whenever you create a new Flutter project, there's always an example counter event, right? So all it does is that when you press a button, it adds 1 to your counter. So in this case, you define different events. In that example, you only have one event, which is increment. All right. Of course, don't forget to import the block Dart package here. Um, Next is you create a class and extend block, letting them know that you are listening for counter events and the state that you are trying to emit is an integer, right? Um, and this is where you initialize um, your counter block. So it starts at 0. All right. Now here we override map event to state. So as I mentioned, block basically listens for any events being sent to uh, the counter block. So any event that is being triggered, it will then um, go through the different switch events. In this case, it's listening for counter event, and you have a switch event here. You only have one counter event, which is increment. So every time that you send out counter event increment to the state to this block, it will add 1 to the previous state. In this case, it's 0. Now it's going to be 1. So if you try to send out another counter event increment, it will become 2, 3, 4, etc., etc. Right? So that's basically all right. Now, the thing is with block, over time, um, the author, which is Felix Angelo, he noticed that block is being used in a different way. And he developed something quite easier to use, which is called a qubit. Now, qubit, as you can see, it looks quite similar to a block, but it's actually, think of it as block junior or mini block, right? The difference is that you have your UI. Instead of sending out event, there are some functions in qubit that you just call. So for example, you tap that button. Instead of sending block an event, you just call a function. Then you process the logic, and then it will emit a state. Let's see an example of it. Here, it's quite much shorter, much more concise than the block. As you can see, you have a class called counter qubit. You just extend qubit, and all you need is all you need is the state that you're going to emit, right? Same thing as block. This is how we initialize it. And then as you will see, you have a function called increment. This is using the 5 arrows. And it will just basically, emit state +1. So this one is much easier. Um, you can use this, basically you can use both of them. That's the beauty of using block. You can use both of them, right? So here's a breakdown of both of them. So you have block and qubit. Qubit is much more simple and concise. Thing is, qubit, you cannot trace it or do reactive operations, reactive X operations. When you say reactive X operations, this is where you try and an example of this is that you have a search bar and you're typing on it. Sometimes when you type on it and then you stop, that's the only time it triggers the event. That's basically a reactive operation. It's called debounce. That is not possible with qubit. I mean, With block, you can do that, right? And with block, it's traceable because you can add a function in your Flutter app wherein it basically observes all of the events and state that is being emitted. So that's why it's traceable. But both of them are scalable, and um, there's some tooling support. If you're using VS Code, um, there are some support, or there are some plugins that you can put in your VS Code in order to create a block or a qubit for you. Later, I'll demonstrate that one. Cool. So I hope that's clear. Um, all right. So basically, that's block and qubit, but I think it's much better if we do a demo app. Okay. So basically, in this demo app, I hope you copied the Git link that I have before. In the just in case, here it is again. So if you want to follow along the live coding, you git clone this one, and then you do cd critterpedia block. Then open it in your preferred IDE. I'm going to use Visual Studio Code because it's much lighter and it's much faster. There is also a plugin for block. But anyways, our demo app, basically we're going to have we're going to create a mini version of the app that I created before, which is the Critterpedia. There is a URL or an API, a free API that we can fetch data from. So basically, we're going to fetch the data from here, and then whenever they click on this one, they show the details. All right. So basically, this kit basically tells you, it will show you some of the data. All right. So now let's do some coding then. Okay. So I hope you can see my screen. It's not too dark. All right, so let's try and explore our project, right? So when you open it, you can just go to your Visual Studio Code, the file, new window, and then open, and then look for Critterpedia block. Then just click on open. All right. Anyways, I have it open here, so no worries about that one. So also, it would be good if you turn on the terminal here, right? Because we're gonna do some terminal commands as well. Right now, in this example, if you try and run it, it will show you an example of a working application, but it is currently using a stateful widget. Right? Try and see. Okay, you can also do run your application here and then run and debug. This one, it gives you more tooling if you would like to monitor the performance of your application and whatnot. But in this case, you can also do it from the terminal using Flutter Run. You can do either way. But the good thing about doing it run and debug is whenever you do some changes, it will automatically change this as well. So anyways, we're just demoing it at the moment. So as you can see, it's a functioning application. So let's try and explore it. All right. See. So if you go to live, let's go to PubSpec YAML first. Sorry, library. It is already divided into different um, directories. One is for models, repository, screens, widgets. Of course, screens is basically we only have two screens, which is the main one, which is the list screen, and the other one is the list screen if you click on this one. All right. Widgets, of course, are the different widgets being used on the pages. We also have repositories. Repositories, whenever you try and building an application, try and do things separately. For example, if you're going to fetch something data, usually you name it as a service or a service or repository or data source. There are lots of good tutorials on clean architecture. You can check it out later. Um, so in this case, we have a repository wherein this is basically a class, and the class is all it does is we call this get fishes, and it will fetch data from this one, ACNH API, v1 fish, and it will encode it, decode it, and place it in an all fish class. So basically, that's a repository. Models, basically for models, whenever you are dealing with data, it's always important that you take your JSON file and convert it into an Dart object. The advantages of it, I mean, you can do it directly from the JSON um, to your UI, but converting it to an object is quite important, or at least it's useful. In this case, for example, we have a class of fish and a class of all fish. All fish is basically a list of fishes, right? So whenever we get the data from the API, it always it's basically a map of fish data. In this case, it's a string and the data. All right. So let me try and give you an example of it. So, let's copy this one. All right, sorry about that. So it looks, so we're expecting a map of, you know, a map of data wherein you have the string, and this is the rest of the data about that particular fish, right? Cool. So let's go back. Now the thing is with creating models or objects from your JSON data, is that you can add, for example, in this case, methods in order to manipulate it. Okay, so the logic to convert from the map to the list is not in your UI; it's on the model itself. So that's important point why it's good to convert JSON data into objects. So, anyways, um, fish is basically information about the fish. You have the ID, file, file name, names, and it has shadows, availability, etc. You can check it out later. You can dissect it if you want to, but basically, this is what is being used here. So if we go to the main page, right, the list of screens. So basically, you have a list view builder, and it will build a fish row widget, and the fish row widget is expecting a fish data, right? So fish name is here. How much is it? 900 bells. Okay, similar to this page as well. All right, so basically that's creating an app. This is a sample of an app using stateful widget. All right, let's try and quit this first and do git stash for now. Then go git check out a starter. Right? Okay, now the starter branch, basically I laid out most of the stuff that we're going to do, but I'll explain most of them. So you still have your models, your repository, screens, widgets here, right? Let's close all of them. But then you have blocks already, right? So you have block, qubit, and favorites. Okay, so we are going to try and explore this one by one. All right, so the first thing that you need to do, okay, in order to use your use a new state management is of course adding the package. Now we go to pubspec YAML, right? Now in this case, we're going to use Flutter block. Okay, I hope yeah, I think this is the latest version. Flutter block 6.1.1. And of course, we're also going to use equatable. Basically, the thing is with block, if you're trying to emit the same set of data, it's not going to emit the second one. It's just going to emit the first one. So in order to emit a new, again, you have to make sure that those two versions are different. So equatable, it allows comparison between objects without having to override the equals operator. Right? Now, once you've done that, usually it's automatic in VS Code. But just in case, you type in Flutter packages, it. All right. So it makes sure that this one and this one, oops, has been imported. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is that, okay, we need our state management to fetch data from the API, right? And then once it's fetched, it will tell our screen or our app that it's already finished. Now, I think if you try and run this, let's try and run debug this time. Okay, it will take a bit of time, but be patient. It's usually the first time you run a Flutter app, it would take a bit of time. So that, you know, be patient. But once it does the first build, the consecutive builds would be much shorter. So no worries about that one. Okay. All right. So at the moment, oh, at the moment, we only have um, a blank screen. Why is that? Let's try and go back to our Cryptopedia app. And um, this is the main dart. Okay. So basically, it calls the main page, and the main page, it its body, okay, is the fish list screen. So let's click on this one. So basically, it's only sized box. All right. So that's why we don't see anything here. Okay. Now the first. Now we're ready to do the uh, placing block to our application. But the first thing you need to think of is where do we add our block. Um, Now, in this case, if we're going to use the data in different screens, it's usually better to place it the highest widget that we can place it on. All right, and in our case, what we're going to do, let's go back to main.dart. All right, and we're going to try and place it on the very top of our application. Remember when we did, when we are discussing, um, we're discussing a sample application before. Let's see, in your cart state is all the way at the top. That is what we're going to also do. All right, so let's go back. So in this case, we define the block here. But then again, all right, we haven't created the block yet. All right, oh, right. So let's go to our directory called blocks. Now, usually, in order to create blocks, um, if you have a Visual Studio Code, you can go and install um, an extension called block. It's by the package creator as well, right? Now, since I already have this, I don't have to install it. Um, you go here in blocks, right click, then go way down, block, new block. Click on that one, and then enter the name of your block. Right, in this case, I'll skip because I think I already created one. Right, now, so in the block, the first thing that you would need to do is basically um, think of the event that you'll be doing. In this case, basically, we're going to ask our block to fetch data from an API. In this case, we extend, okay, we create fishes events, extends equatable, and then we'll just extend it again and name it as get fishes requested. Okay, so every time that we call this or send this event to the block, it will trigger it. Now, what state are we expecting on this page? Well, there are several. First of all, is the initial. Initial is basically just a blank page, um, or init state. Sorry, I entered two uh, states here. There's also loading. Basically, this is the state while we're going to emit this while it's um, calling or waiting for the data. Because one of the things that is really frustrating is that when you try and call data and your app is doing nothing, it's not showing any indicator, that's going to make your app not user friendly. So we need to have a state for that one. And then once we receive the data, we get the fishes loaded. This is the state wherein the fishes, the fish data has already been fetched, right? And then when we emit it, we are going to attach the data fishes, all right? We'll show how it's done later on. Well, of course, this is an equatable. You have to override the props here, fishes. Okay. But there are times, like for example, you don't have any internet connection. You can also have an error screen, so you have an error state for that one. In this case, we're going to attach what is the error, string error message, and then error message. Right? Props will be error message. Now on the event, sorry, on the block itself, I'm going to delete this one. All right, cool. So the first thing that you need to do is that for the fishes block, right, you have to enter, of course, the initial state. In this case, it's initial. So I think I made a mistake here. I added init state. We can remove that. All right. And then since we are calling a data and we already have a repository that does that, somehow we need to um, pass this fish repository to our block so that it can use it to call data, to call the APIs, to call this method. All right. In this case, we define, final fishes repository and repository, and we pass it as a parameter. Okay. So now you have an override stream fishes state, event to state. Cool. So what do we do here? First is basically we're going to try and listen for all of the different events that's coming in. But in this case, we have get fishes requested. Okay. So what will happen is that here is that if event is get fishes requested, as you can see, there's automatic autocomplete. All right. First is we try and yield fishes loading. Right. So the first thing that will happen is that it will change the state from initial blank into fishes loading. All right. Now before we continue on, let's try and make this work for now. All right. So when we save, nothing happens. Okay. So here in our main, we have to, of course, add or define the repository here. All right. So how do we add the repository? First of all is we go fishes repository. Okay. And fishes block. Fishes block. All right. Then underneath here, we initialize them. So fishes repository equals to fishes repository and fishes block equals to we basically create a new um, instance of them, right? Fishes block. Now, fishes block is looking for a repository. In this case, we just need to pass this on here. Okay. Now, in order to fetch, okay, what we'll do in this one is that when the app loads, it fetches it right away. Okay, so in order to pass or to trigger an event, is that we just type in fishes block dot add, and what is our event? We get fishes. All right, just copy paste this. All right, let's see. Oops. Okay, let's try and run it again and see what happens. From here, there's no changes yet because we're not, we just initialized the block. We're not doing any um, changes to the UI yet. Okay. Right, so while it's trying to run, okay, so we initialized it already. Okay, so nothing happens. Why? Because we need to um, attach or inject our block to our application. And where is our application? It's usually here in the material app, right? So the best way to do this is if you have the block plugin extension, you can just type in block provider and it will insert it for you. Okay, so block provider, our block provider is, we're going to pass in a type fishes block. And then since we already initialize it here, we'll just copy it like that. Okay. All right. Now we are just going to move this, the material app, under inside as a child of the block provider. All right. Let's delete this one. Then type in return. Don't forget the semicolon. All right. As you can see, it's still giving me that error because I haven't imported the library called Flutter underscore block. All right, let's save this. Okay, nothing happened yet because we're just injecting the data. Now, where is this portion here? It's here in the fish list screen. Now in the fish list screen, here we put in the block builder. Type in block builder, okay, and return it like that. Okay, let's add the library, and our subject is fishes block. Oh, if I can spell that correctly. Right. So you have fishes block and fishes state, right? Then as a default, we're going to return sized box, right? So that's the first step. Now, basically, Block Builder is a listener. It listens to the block that you provided, but you have to make sure that there is an injected fish block um, on one of the parents of the app. So basically, it's kind of um, so it's kind of like right. So it's kind of like this one. We're in. Sorry about that. Okay, so it's kind of like how our example before, you have the cart data at the top. So basically, it's the same thing. So we have the block at the top. Then block builder basically tries and goes through the parent widgets until it finds the particular block. All right, now. So what state do we have at the moment? All right, so basically when we try and call it, it's going to have fishes loading, right? So let's try and create a UI for that one. So fishes, let's try and close some of the screens here. All right, here you go. So fish list screen. So you're going to have a bunch of if statements. In this case, if is state is right, fishes loading, it's going to return. Let's see if I have a widget for the loading screen. I don't have it, so we're just going to put in circular progress indicator and see how it goes. So as you can see, if we refresh this, it starts blank. It's quite fast. It starts blank, and it will show the progress indicator since the state now is fishes loading. All right. Cool. So while it's loading the fishes, right? It's calling the data from. Um, okay. Um, it's displaying this one. So now we're going to try and get the fishes, all right? We're going to do a try catch here, all right? So first is we're going to go, sorry, try catch. Success. All right, okay. So first is we're going to go final fishes. Fishes equals to await repository that get fishes. All right. If you try and check out the first example, the first branch and this branch, basically the logic is the same. So basically, we're going to ask repository. So that's the beauty of separating things. If I place the fetching of the data inside um, the stateful widget, now I have to recreate it here. Now, since it's in a different, it's separated, we just call the class. All right. So in this case, we get the fishes. You're expecting future fishes, and await. Once we have the data, so we have the data, we basically just yield fishes loaded, loaded, right? Fishes loaded, fishes. Oops, sorry. Okay. If there's an error, we yield fishes list. First error. Error occurred. Sorry. Error. Error occurred. Right. All right. So if we refresh this again, nothing happened yet. Let's go back to our list screen. Okay. So as you can see, the circular progress indicator disappeared because it has already fetched it, right? So, but I'm going to try and center this. Let's see if that's going to. Yeah. All right. So the circular progress indicator is in the center. All right. Now we're going to deal if state is fishes. Um, if it's an error, right? Final string message. Right. Message is state dot error message. Okay. Then basically we are just going to return center child text message. All right. Let's try and make it cause an error. Right, let's see. So in this case, error occurred because there's nothing to fetch. All right, so we save it, then go back to fish list string. Then last we deal with state is fishes loaded, right? Nope. State that fishes, and it's expecting fishes. Fishes model. All right. Cool. So after that, just put in for now X loaded. Right. Let's see. Hot restart. Then it's loaded already. Okay. Let me see. So how do we put in the list screen? So basically, fishes is one model that has a map inside of it with the list of with the fishes. But then again, we can display it, okay, as a list view. The thing is with the list view, okay, check the fishes. So it's a map of fishes, right? Fish map. Now, list view is expecting a list of fishes. Is expecting a list instead of a map. So, good thing that we added this one. I added this one. Wherein it converts the map of fish into a list. right? So we'll call this getter. So final list of fish list equals to fishes dot get list. Okay. Now for the list view, we'll do is children. We get the list of fish list dot, and then we map them. Okay, map each fish, and then okay, we need to return a widget. What widget are we going to use? So let's look inside our widgets, and we can use this fish row widget. Yep. So in this fish row widget, it's expecting a list of fish. No, single fish object. Sorry. All right. So return fish row widget, right? And then we pass in fish here. Now it's still giving me an error because this one, it's sending out an iterable. Now what we need to do is to convert it to list. All right, now we'll see. Once we refresh, it's now showing the list that we have here. Okay, cool. I hope that's clear to you. Now the thing is, again with block, it seems a bit complicated, right? So you have event, you have state. Um, Now, what if we can make it even easier? It's quite possible by using qubit. All right, I already have set up a qubit here, but in our example, all right, let me do this too. Right now, if we go create a new qubit, it's the same thing as creating a block. Basically, you right click on the folder or directory that you need to create the block the qubit on, then go to the very bottom, qubit, new qubit. Then you type in the qubit name. For example, we'll name it as fishes. Now it will create a directory. It's called qubit right here, and it will create fishes qubit and fishes state, right? Because that's the only two things that you need, the qubit and the state, right? Unlike the block, right? Now let's for now, let's try and delete this one. I'm just showing you an example. But anyways, as you can see, it imports the block, imports the creatable, yeah, and state already. All right. So let's delete this one because I already set up one here already. Let's rename this back to Q. Okay, now this time instead of using a block, we're going to go use a qubit. Now in the state, as you can see, this is basically just a copy paste of the fish's state. All right. So in this case, is all we need. Then you have a qubit here. All right, sorry. Don't need that one. Cool. So let's have to remove that one. Okay, so in this case, you already have a blank fishes qubit again. Similar to block, we added repository as a parameter. Um, and we're going to pass it to this qubit, and then we're going to use it to call to fetch the data for us. All right, so let's name it. Let's name a function. All right. Example, in this case, we're going to name it as get fishes. Right? Going to be async because it's just going to do an await, and then we're just going to emit. Similar to fishes block, we're going to emit our fishes state, which is fishes loading on the first call, right? This is similar to what we've done before. Okay. Now let's try and go back and instead of completing this now, we're going to go back and try and implement or inject a qubit instead of the block. Right? So main.dart, go back here. In this case, I created a block variable and to hold the block instance, right? Now, there is a faster way to do this in block. Instead of doing that, you can actually go here, type in fishes block, and then you put in the repository, which is this one, right? Now, what will happen here is that the block library will do the initialization for you. You can do this as well. So in this case, since we're going to do qubit instead of fishes block, we're going to change this to qubit. Oh, shoot. Qubit. Since that is the name of our qubit class. Where's that? There you go. Qubit class. Fishes qubit. Ah. All right. Then click on the light bulb and import it. Okay. Make sure you let's delete the block because we're not going to use it anymore. Yeah, and then let's remove the to do. Oh no, what happened? All right, you have to, of course, refresh, reload, and still not doing it. Why? Because as you can see, the error here, it's looking for a fishes block. Now we're not inserting fishes block anymore. So that's why it's causing an error. So we have to go to fish list screen. And then instead of fishes block here, right, we do qubit. And don't forget to remove fishes block, the dart here. All right. I hope that works. Let's see. There you go. So since we still don't have any other state in the qubit, it's still blank. So let's go back to qubit. Then here, again, we're going to do the try catch statement. Catch. right? Then so instead of yield, emit fishes list error, error message, error occurred. I hope I spelled that right. Okay, now try. Basically, first is we're going to get the list of fishes, right? Fishes from our repository. Repository dot get fishes. All right. Once we have this one, then we can emit fishes. Loaded. And the fishes will be fishes. There you go. Now let's try and reload it. Let's see why it's not. Let's try and restart. Fishes, emit, catch fishes. Ah, I know why it's not working. Haven't triggered the call yet. That's why it's not doing anything, right? So sometimes this happens. Sometimes it happens. So where did we call? Right, so fishes qubit, right? We can actually call it here from here. So dot dot get fishes. So after initializing it, dot dot basically tells Dart to use the result of this one and trigger this command. So let's see if that will work. Refresh, and there you go. So basically, of course, you can inject the block and put in your listener, but if you don't trigger it, it's not going to work. All right. Cool. So basically, that's using block and qubit. But you can also, guess we still have time. Um, we'll try and have another example. I already have it here. It's called favorites. Let's try and trigger this button or even this button to add it to your favorites. Now, the only thing with this one is that we don't have, we're not going to use any place to save it. It's just going to be on memory. So if you restart it, um, our list is going, our favorites is going to be left to blank. All right, let's close all of this. And right, so basically, what do you need in this case? For example, you would like to like this one, Bitterlink. So what data do you need? Basically, um, you would need to store its name or file name somewhere in your app. In this case, we're going to store the string, the list of string of our um, selected fish, right? So in this case, going to remove this first. All right. states. So, right. Cool, cool, cool. Let's start from, I think it's start with right here. Yeah, let's remove all those. So basically, what we need to do first is you have to think of what would be the state or the data that you need to communicate to the app, or that the app needs to track. In this case, it's going to be a list of fishes, or a list of strings. So final list string, let's call it favorites, right? Um, we go type in, what's that, favorites, that, oops, this would be our declaration, is that favorites. All right, now we also need to, since this is an equatable, it's saying that it's missing an implementation. So just click on this one, add the missing override. Okay, as mentioned before, equatable is an essential part of block. Basically, you can use equatable or you can use freeze. There are so many packages that you can use in this one. Basically, you'll just need to have a way for you to compare if one state is different from another state. Now, how do you determine if one state is different? It's determined by the props. In this case, it's the favorites, right? So if you try and emit favorite state with one uh, string, and then try to emit favorite state with two strings, and you don't have this one, all right, there's no way for Dart to compare if these two states are different. So it won't emit anything. Later, we're going to try and test that out. All right. So, but before uh, doing this one, I'll add a factory, and it's a favorite state that initial. All right, and it's just going to um, um, going to just emit a state that is, or it's going to create a state that is just basically blank, right? Right, like that. Okay, cool. So that takes care of the favorite state. So this is where we are going to put our list of strings. Now, in Qubit, we are going to create a function. Right. Now, since this is only placed in the memory and it's not saved in a Firebase or even in the device, um, it's not going to have any future functions, because you're just going to store it on a variable. So in this case, we don't have any async and await code. So we go add favorites, string file name. Okay. So because if we check out our fishes model, um, we have fish here, and you can either have ID or file name, but let's just use file name on this one. Okay, so file name. So first is, okay, so what we'll do is, to make it easier, we are going to initialize a list of strings, and this will be a new list. Okay. The new list, we're going to add um, all of the previous state data. Okay, new list, but add all, and in order to get previous state, put in state at favorites. Okay, right. So new list, then we're going to add whatever is passed on as a new file name. All right. Okay, here you go. All right. So just to test this, we're going to try and print it out. All right. Okay. So, but then again, we haven't injected this in our app at all. So since this is going to be used on this page and this page, we'll also put it in the main.dart. Okay. Now the good thing about uh, block provider is that you can actually nest it. So you can go another block provider here, then nest it. Another way you can do it is you can click here, rapid widget, and then copy until here, previous block provider. This is just a shortcut if you're already aware of what you're going to do. Right, so favorites, qubit. Okay, block. All right, so in this case, we added a new qubit, and it's called favorites qubit. There are, as you can see, we didn't trigger it to do anything because the triggering happens when you press this button, right? So it's injected, but it's not functioning. If you click on this one, nothing happens. So what we'll do is we'll go to this one, which is, I'm guessing it's the favorite button here. All right. Now on top, yep, if we go print, oh, and click on this one, it's gonna print hello. All right. Now this is where we're going to trigger our block, right? Now, in order to trigger a block, we need to ask or find the nearest qubit or block from our parents, from the widget's parents. So from this button to the row to up to the main the material app, even before the material app. So how do you do that? Basically, first, okay, um, you'll use favorites qubit to store it in a variable block provider dot off text. Right, block provider dot off will find the nearest block um, in the context tree. But the thing is, there. Remember, we have two blocks. We have I mean, 2 qubit, one for favorites and one for the fishes. Now you have to pass on the type. In this case, it's the favorites qubit, right? Um, we need to import the library, right? So once qubit is already stored, right? Type in qubit dot add favorites. Now, in this case, since we're already passing the file name to the favorites button, right? In this case, file name, we just pass that to the add favorites. Okay. Then if we save it, we'll try. Press this one. If we add bitter link, it's going to add it on the list here. Click, fail job, days, cool. Oh, but the thing is, it's not um, adding all of them. All right, that's weird. Why is that? Ah, okay. Because we are not emitting. Let's go back to qubit. It's just qubit. Ah, sorry, favorites qubit. We're just printing whatever is the file name. It comes in. And remember, it takes it from the current state. What is our current state? Our current state is the initial, which is the blank one. So if we put in emit favorites state and then emit a new list, right? Let's hot restart. If we press bitterling, pale chub, days, goldfish, it's now adding it to the list. All right, cool. So the thing is, if we press bitterling again, it's going to do bitterling, pale chub. So it's already doubled. All right. Now we need to create a remove favorites. Okay. So we'll just copy add favorites and then remove and then change it remove favorites file name. Okay. New list. We add all the new list. The difference here is that the new list will remove the element, which is it's a string, fish name, evening, or I'll just call it favorite. Then favorite, if it's equal to file name. All right. Cool. All right, so we go back to the favorites button. In the favorites button, um, we have to put in an if else statement here. Now, this is an example of where do you think you should put it in your UI or on your qubit? All right. So since I don't think we're going to change the button anyway, so we can place it here. But then again, it might be better to place it inside um, the qubit itself. So qubit handles all of that logic. But in this case, we'll just do it here. Right. So qubit, we're going to ask qubit that state here. Let me double check. Yeah, okay. So let's do this instead. If we're going to, sorry. So state that qubit, the current state of the qubit, that favorites contains the file name, right? It contains a file name, then we just right, remove it. Okay. Try that out and see. Cool. So if we press bitterling, this tree, and bitterling again, it will remove it from our list, as you can see here. All right. Cool. So now it works, but you don't see any changes here. All right. One of the things that, of course, you need to do is that you have to make sure you get the state into your UI. All right. Now, since in our what we did here is that we place the qubit inside the on tap, we can actually place it here in the build. Basically, every time it builds, it gets information, the new the qubit, right? So from here, get a qubit. Oh, shoot, sorry. We need to again create a block builder, right? Because it changes. So every time something changes, a widget changes, you put in a block builder for it. All right. So in this case, our block builder is looking for a favorites qubit, not block. Right. Then you put in return. And all of this until here, we are going to replace the container right there. Right. Cool. Don't forget the semicolon. Okay, now we're ready. So let's see. All right, now. I'm sorry. Yep, sorry, here. All right, so inside the builder, we are going to um, try and see if the file name is in the list, right? So we create a new variable called is favorite, right? And then from the state here, state dot favorites. All right, now we're going to check if it contains the file name. Okay. So from here, yeah, we can actually even change this one. From here, you can use it on your widgets. For example, you would like to change the color of this one. So icon, colors, not favorite. So if it's a favorite, we change the colors white and the background instead of a black gray color here. We go is favorite colors red usual colors. You can see here it's changes. So whenever you press, it adds it to the list and changes your design. You can even change it further. Uh, change the icon, for example. Favorites, title icons, favorite full border. do just the favorite. Let's see. All right. And the good thing about this is that since you have this inside a widget and it's being used here as well, it also changes um, the state of or how it looks like here because the state is um, is accessible from this page. All right. So if you think about it, if you just add the favorites block or qubit inside this screen, if you go to the next screen, you won't be able to access the data. Right. So that's why we placed it um, right above on the main the dart. Cool. So just a few things. Since this looks kind of weird, you can actually return multi-block provider, and then right, and can have multiple providers lined up instead of nesting. That this one. Okay. It works. Serial app here. Okay. Oh, that one. Right. So it's basically the same idea. Now instead of nesting it, it's much more cleaner to look at. This is if you have multiple um, block providers or block inside this widget. Now, for example, if you have in the future just a widget for this page, for example, you would like to buy it from this screen and there's no um, cart at all, you can add um, the block here, right? And you can use just the block provider if it's just going to be just one. But if you have more than one block providers, this is the recommended way to do it. Okay, cool. So let's see. Let's review. All right. Where's that? Okay, it's not working anymore. Okay, so let's just review what the this might not. All right, sorry about that. Technical difficulties. All right, so all right, so anyways, just to review, we did the block creating a block, adding a block to or injecting your block to your app, and then instead of the block, we tried the qubit. The qubit um, the qubit is already working. The qubit is already if it's just simple tasks like this one, like clicking on the button and changes the state, or fetching the data, then Qubit would be good. But then again, if later on, if you think you need more flexibility, then you can upgrade to block. That's the beauty of using just the block library. Anywho, I hope you learned a lot, and hopefully it gives you a spark of what you can do with um, with state management. Again, this is not just the state management one. This is just one of the state managements out there. You have provider, you have Redux, you have Mobex, even inherited widget, and all of that stuff. Go ahead and try all of them out and see what what fits for you. All right, cool. I'll I'll leave it on our to Lou and JJ. Are still there?
Hi, sir. So thank you, Sir Johnny, for that funky talk on Flutter Block.
Yes, so Sir Johnny walked us through state management, its applications, and his state management tool of choice for Flutter, Flutter Block. He talked about streams and Qubit, and we even got a cute demo app that implements Flutter Block in Qubit, which is the Critterpedia containing info about different fish, its prices, as well as features like a favorites list. Sir, maybe someday you could make it for the Nook phone and add the bugs.
Yes, yes. Well, actually, there is one already in Android and the App Store. It's 4-star in iOS, but Android it's not. But yeah, I mean, you see, it's just a simple application. You can achieve so much. Yeah.
Yes, alright. So that's cool. Unfortunately, we're a bit short on time, so we won't be able to enter questions through the chat. But if you have any questions for Sir Johnny, you may go to our Discord server and chat in the Ask Speakers Anything channel. So Sir Johnny is also in our Discord, and he'd be happy to answer your questions during his free time. Also, we have a Flutter Discord challenge, and those who complete it, a Flutter Code Labs challenge on Discord, and those who complete it will receive a certificate, so be sure to check it out.
Alright, so that's it for Funky Flutter February Day 2, Block O'Clock. The Skills Level Up talk from Google DSC is up next. Are you curious about augmenting your practical skills, resume building, careers, internships, and interviews? Ever wonder how Google hires people? Don't miss this chance. They'll be live on the same page, DSC Philippines. Skills Level Up will be live right after us at 4 p.m.
And after that, stay tuned for our next speaker at 6 p.m. and for Day 3 of Funky Flutter February, where we get you from zero to hero with Flutter.
And we hope you're enjoying Funky Flutter February so far.
And we'll be back, DSC Philippines, and up next is the Skills Level Up Talk. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.